it will drive you to a better life. Comparison is how it can feed hunger or motivation. I know both words Nick hates. Almost giving you the activation energy to build discipline and a routine that will create a better life. I think it's exactly why inspirational or motivational, like, short videos work.
I love watching my David Goggins videos as soon as I wake up.
Exactly. When David Goggins screams in your ear, you think it gives you the activation energy to be like, I can be better.
Yeah.
But I think that only creates a short spurt of activation energy. I think building the ideal version of yourself and having the high standards, and that will probably come from comparison, because like we said with the two equal socioeconomic communities, you don't know that there's better. There'll be no path to get there. So I think comparison put in the right schema is almost endless hunger. It will drive you to a better life.
I've got a few of them now. Let's go. Yeah, they're working right now. Good.
Yeah. In the basement.
You can't... No, lunchtime's at 3 p.m.
They don't have lunchtime, mate. You feed them like pieces of bread.
Like the ducks. Yeah. It's like the bum of the bread as well, you know, like that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the
bread.
It's actually the best part, so maybe they won't get it.
It's actually the best part.
Yeah, I love that part.
That lathers with peanut butter, how good.
Yeah, it is good. Goodness me.
Good.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Okay, guys, welcome back to this episode of the Sculpted podcast. Today, I am in a different environment. Hopefully, the camera's actually focused on me. If not, then I'm blurry, but that's calm. And we are back, as usual, with Jack. I love doing these episodes with Jack. It is actually always so good to do it. And today's episode is a variety of different things, probably an extension from our chat on Thursday, which is typical of us. We kind of like do a bit of a airing of like different things that we want to talk about for the Saturday episode, which is good because then we can get out everything that we don't want to say on camera there. And that could just be misinformed opinions, right? And then we formalize them and then make it appropriate for the podcast.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's a good way of doing it because we are learning, and that's an important process.
That's the main thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, actually, you know what? Let's put a bit of a spin onto it. Jack, tell me about a valuable lesson or a valuable thought you've had this week.
Okay. Probably the most important thing that we spoke about as well on Thursday is about comparison, and related to the app as well. Obviously, I'll plug that in the first minute.
Guy wants equity.
Yeah, it's on film now. But about how comparison, a lot of like the cliche is that it is the thief of joy, and definitely with social media, a lot of it is framed in a negative scenario, being like you're seeing all these like the fantasy of what people live like and everything. But I think my thought was that I think it is only negative if you put it in the wrong schema. So if it is in a negative schema where you think of yourself as less than that possibility, I think that's when it is negative. Or without action, comparison is debilitating. But comparison with action to try and get yourself to that ideal state, I think that breeds success.
What made you think of
that? It was something I heard about a study of two socioeconomic communities who the offspring of those communities.
Quite a weird way to explain it.
What?
Offspring.
Offspring.
Yeah.
Children of those
the kids.
the kid. No, I'm trying to make this podcast high level. I know.
Professional.
Yeah, professional.
Yeah,
sure. We'll go with that. The children of those communities, if they had seen a rich community or a rich person, they didn't even have to have that many interactions with them, but just to see that, almost like see that value at a younger age, they were seen when they were to grow up would be in a better financial situation than those who hadn't. Where if you were to take the cliche that comparison is the thief of joy, you'd think that those children who'd seen the rich would think, oh well, that's not me. I'll never be able to get there, and it would have negative consequences. Whereas because they could see that was a possibility, it facilitated them to achieve that goal.
Yeah, we actually did speak about that in one of the other podcasts that we did as well. And now I do see that parallel being drawn together because it can be used very much for good. And Jack and I believe, right, we don't really see comparison as the thief of joy. And that may just be because the way that we frame comparison. I think that other people may frame comparison in a negative light to where it's literally them comparing what they see and what they know themselves to be compared to someone's highlight reel. And I put it into perspective a lot, thinking about, well, I don't find it necessarily the thief of joy. I find it's like, oh, now I've got to do this and I'll actually take action with it. And I think that that's very much the same framework as yourself there, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is we probably believe that what someone else has achieved, we can achieve that too. There's no reason why we can't achieve that. And that's the schema that we've put comparison in. Whereas if you don't have that belief, I think it would be easy for comparison to be in that, well, I'm not as worthy. You can think of so many excuses as to why you can't get to that level. Whereas I think making comparison give you the confirmation bias that, oh, there's more out there for me. And then you look at what you've achieved already. I think that will facilitate success.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that if someone does believe that comparison is the thief of joy, and I'm not saying that this is a blanket kind of perspective on someone who says that. Maybe it's just they haven't thought about it too much. But if someone is saying that, then it may show that the things that they compare themselves to, either they have an attitude that maybe is a little bit more fixed to where they believe that they maybe are never able to get there, or they are, I wouldn't say insecure, but maybe they lack the confidence that they can get to where they want to or where they see others getting. And, not that it's a bad thing. I understand that perspective. And I'd probably say that when I was younger, I probably fell into that without even knowing it. But now that we have a lot of evidence for doing things that others have done as well, we can probably believe and not necessarily see comparison as a thief of joy, but it's more a standard's been set and let's go chase after it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is that, like you said, the fixed versus growth mindset, and that is why the self-development space is booming so much, and why it's so addictive as well to people when they do have that positive reinforcement and see that, oh, my work translated to results, which I didn't think was possible, and almost that belief that it is like Sculpted. The whole idea of Sculpted is you'll never get to that ideal place. It's always you're always building them.
Yeah. There's a quote that I heard in the Chris Williamson and what's his name? Alex Hormozy podcast. Now, I explained to Jack.
What's his name?
Yeah, that was a little bit disrespectful. The reason why I was forgetting his name was because I was writing down the quote. All right, so bear with me here. But I have said before, I think maybe even in this podcast, I'm not a massive consumer of those types of people, their content. I'm actually a bit of a brain numbing person where I kind of watch funny videos to get other perspectives on things. And I actually think that helps with self-awareness. Jack, I'll send Jack a bunch of funny videos from these guys every now and then. And it'll just be it'll be so out of pocket, but so funny and relatable. And it's inadvertent self-development because it's don't do this. Or... Yeah. It's actually they're kind of speaking facts here.
But it's true. It's people who are giving probably different. They've had different experiences to you and I.
Yeah.
And then giving their views of their experiences. And then being able to see that from our perspective almost challenges the thoughts. And that's why we started talking on Thursdays as well. If we remember, is almost trying to bring each other challenging thoughts to kind of question our own beliefs already.
Yeah.
And if we can do things better.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So in a weird way, your stupid, funny videos are high performance.
And is that over-rationalizing my procrastination, arguably?
Not at all.
Not at all. That they are funny though, and I think that they actually make me much more productive. Like I noticed that like when I put a funny video on, I kind of forget about how boring and mundane the work is. I don't know if like, actually, I think we have spoken about that.
That's rationalizing it. That is.
But wait, I think I did rationalize this pretty fairly with you before when we were talking about if I didn't feel like training, I'd put on a funny YouTube video and train because it then makes me feel like I'm just watching a funny video and not really training.
Yes, I think that's okay if you're doing very low cognitive tasks.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to remember something or learn, it's probably...
That is a good point. Yeah, I wouldn't say though. I'd say that I do very, very boring, monotonous, similar tasks with video editing, which is probably why I can get away with it, to be fair.
Yeah. See, so, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, this guy has to read all the time.
I know.
That's unlucky. I would hate reading. Nothing fun about that. But I actually haven't even mentioned the quote, and that was talking about Alex Hormozy and Chris Williamson. And Alex Hormozy was talking about people who have all the attributes but none of the proof. And it was very good. Like I really, really like that because I think about that very much with our football careers because we had all the attributes to be a professional footballer. We had all the character traits of being a professional footballer. But we had, to be fair, Jack had a lot of proof, right? Made his debut, schoolboys national team, everything like that, on the right track. And there are players who didn't make their professional debut at the age of 20, who didn't play for the national, for the schoolboys team, and now are playing in the A-League. They had none of the proof and arguably none of the attributes, but now they did. And thinking about it in that perspective, just because you have all of the attributes doesn't mean you will ever get the proof. And just because you don't have them doesn't mean you won't get the proof either.
Yeah.
But
it is hard to see when you're on that journey, right?
Very hard to see. Very hard. And you don't know what's right.
Definitely for people like us who have those high standards and almost... going back to comparison, think that just because someone else has done it, it doesn't mean we can't, or we probably have that ego as well, thinking that we can achieve that too.
Yeah.
And it's not going, just because you believe that doesn't mean that everything is all rosy and you really enjoy comparison, because still like us, we can probably vouch for it. It drags you a bit as opposed to it drives you. Yeah, almost like you feel that like activation energy, and it's sometimes not pleasant. Yeah,
it's interesting because I do think, I guess, the framework, the perspective, all of the work that we do, I'd say that we're very reflective people. Like I was saying to Jack, 2 hours of reflection last night. Like, we love reflecting.
Yeah.
But in that example, like you've got a very weird dichotomy there, because you can compare yourself and think about, oh, this is what they've done, I should do the same because they're like me. And this is why I kind of have that perspective on don't listen to advice, and also don't really try and copy others. And that's one reason why I don't like to listen to Alex Hormozy too much, is because I feel like if I listen to him too much, I'm going to start copying everything that he does. Because like I'm very aware of how I will copy people's behaviors. I'll copy their mannerisms. I'll copy their accent. I'll copy their...
But what's wrong with that?
Well, I think what that is I am being misguided, because the best way for me to see where my results lie is through taking the actions that I purposely took 100%. Where is if I'm listening to Alex Hormozy and he says, oh, in this situation, you should do this, and I don't believe that you should, then half of the responsibility, or let's say 75% of the responsibility is on me, and 25% I'm saying, well, that's what Alex Hormozy told me to do. Whereas I think the best way to do it is actually appreciate what they've said. Don't necessarily do it if you don't believe in doing it, but do what you think is right at 100% conviction, even if it's wrong, because then you at least know where you went wrong.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I would think that, almost let it be maybe a guide, or I would rather listen to someone like Alex Hormozy than Joe off the street. But,
okay.
But I think, because that does give you a good framework to be, you should look up to people like that, because they are, at the end of the day, where you want to go, or in that sort of sphere of where you want to go. So I think it is valuable kind of seeing how they've done it. But I would say more the character that they are, as opposed to exactly how they've done it.
That's a good point.
what's their personality and what behaviors did they do that made them the success they are, as opposed to what was their literal career path. And in this situation, what would he do?
That is a good point, because I think that maybe even just the behaviors of a person is better to copy, not necessarily copy, but let's say take notes from, rather than the actions that they've taken, because it is a very, very complex situation. If I was to say, okay, well, I've got my app, let's relate it to Alex Hormozy and his gyms. If I was to think about how Alex Hormozy did his gyms, which I have no idea about, but I can imagine it's very, very different to how I'd run an app. The same lessons that I learned from him, if I was to apply with my app, it's not the right thing to do. And I'd have to probably not copy again, but I'd take notes from his behaviors, how he reacted to, let's say, a gym going, bankrupt or something like that. The reaction is probably, and the behaviors is probably more beneficial than copying the actions.
Yes, I think 100%.
Yeah, which is where comparison can mislead you, because also comparison might make you copy what someone else is doing.
Yeah. I think it is. Yeah, because it is. That is valuable, because if you almost let the comparison lead your competition or your path, then even when you achieve it, have you really achieved it? But I think it is letting comparison almost fall into the schema that there are more possibilities, or there's no reason I can't achieve that. And then, almost building yourself up, building the character yourself to achieve that, as opposed to thinking I need to replicate exactly what they've done.
Yeah. And to bring it back to the point where it's like copying someone isn't necessarily the best thing. Like, I think that forcing it a lot of the times isn't a brilliant way of doing it, because you run a very, very high risk of failure. And not to say that failure is bad, but you put yourself in a compromised position to come back from it. And one of the best examples that I'll give to that is me moving to Germany. I was really forcing it. And if I didn't make it work, then that would have been probably the end of my football career. I made it work on the last day of the transfer window. Like, it was truly the craziest thing that on the last day of the transfer window that I even signed with this team and I was able to play there. If I hadn't have done that, then I would have been royally, as Jack would say, fucked. Yeah. Like I would have been so far in the bin that I would have probably had to have quit football then and there, because it's like I couldn't have made it back.
Progress of the SCULPTED app if you hadn't got signed.
Yeah, great point. We'd probably be in the same position. Oh gosh, but it's because the risk is so much. It's like, how do you quantify all these different things? How do I copy? How do I not force it? It's so difficult to figure out what the best thing to do is. And in that case, I do believe that just make the mistakes, do it with 100% conviction. If you think you're right, believe it 100%, because if you're not, at least you know that you weren't. Where if you're doing it 50-50, you don't know what was right and what was wrong in that situation.
And I don't think it is a net positive going for any endeavor wholeheartedly. Like we did with football, we quit and we realized that
retired
it wasn't. Oh, yeah, we retired. Yeah, quit doesn't fall into your narrative.
No, not really. It's more of a shift. Yeah, I shifted from football.
Yeah,
the next
retired
thing.
At 20.
Yeah,
19.
19.
19.
Yeah.
What a long career. But we realized that it probably didn't align with what we really wanted to achieve long term.
Yeah.
But if we both look back, it was a net positive for all the experiences we had, what we learned, the character we built at such a young age. And I think that would be for anything. If you really go, like you say, wholeheartedly into it and kind of have those really high standards and expectations for yourself, I think the character you build as a byproduct is the most important thing.
Yeah, very much agree. Now, segueing it into the ego perspective and how that could be taken the wrong way, which I think is very, very prevalent in my life, where people think that I'm very arrogant and that I've got maybe a massive ego because of that conviction. And I understand that.
Are they wrong?
I wouldn't say that they're completely wrong. But I would say, if you got to know me a little bit.
Well done.
Thank you. I would say, though, like from the outside perspective, I would say that I probably look very arrogant. I'd say that I look probably like a bit of a dickhead. But I'd say that if you got to know me, you'd realize that that's not the case. But it's a part of my narrative because I do believe that you have to believe that you are right and then admit when you are wrong. And it takes a lot of awareness to admit when you are wrong. But I also believe that I have enough awareness. Now, I'm not going to say I have the most awareness, but I would like to admit when I am wrong, because at least I can then be propelled forwards to make a better decision. So when I do believe something 100%, I'll show it. I'll really show it.
But also, like you said with what Alex Hormozy said, is sometimes you have the skills or the character or everything without the proof yet.
Good
And
point.
You might look at the ego of someone who is at that place and think, oh, it's justified because look at their results. Whereas they would never get to that if they didn't have the conviction and the belief that they could when they didn't. So I think, probably it's easy to say now when you don't have the results to back it up. But I think you need to have that conviction to even get to that spot.
It's actually a really good point because the difference between having the proof and not having the proof probably solely relies on ego, because you have the attributes. When you do get the result or the proof in this situation, the attributes don't change. It's literally just confirmation to everything that you've been doing. Therefore, that's just like an ego boost almost. And that's what it was for me when I moved to Germany and made it work. That was just like, oh yeah, I basically just did the impossible. Now I believe that I have proof for what I believe.
Yes.
Nothing more really changed.
And ego, and that's the point where ego can be a detriment, because if you keep chasing that, it would be addictive. Imagine all the work you've done and then finally you get rewards for it. That would build your ego, and it's validation that work mattered.
Yeah.
If you keep chasing that high or the outcome of that will feed your ego, I think that's where it becomes, I think you sort of lose your own path.
Yeah, soon enough I'll be at Star Casino thinking that, oh yeah, I'll put it all on black and I'll win a house, even when the odds are against me. And that's what it could lead to.
Don't act as if that's not your plan later today anyway.
Oh gosh. Caught red-handed. That's exactly what I was doing. The interesting point though, I think that we can also go into is talking about how ego is what drives competitiveness. And when I think about like the most competitive footballers, I wouldn't say that I'm naturally too competitive, but I would say that over the long term, I'm very, very competitive, because I would think that my ego is like not typically the things that I have now. It's what I can do in the future. If that makes sense.
Same with me.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I think our growth mindset overrides our ego, whereas a lot of people, their ego overrides that, which means winning a game right now is so important for them in this moment to validate their ego. Whereas we probably think that we can win this game and we'd like to, but if we don't, imagine how good it will be in the future when we do.
Facts, bro. Facts. Literally the best way to put it. Yeah. And I've never been able to relate to anyone on that. And we haven't even spoken about that previously, but I'm not surprised that we align very, very closely. Like I remember,
so true,
bro, in Bulls training, whenever we're like, because I would typically be on the worst team. You probably were in the one. No, but like just because of age and whatnot, like it would probably be, you would be in the team above me.
No way. If you were in the worst team, then I'm probably the reason why you're in the worst team.
No, I'm pretty sure from memory, I don't know who I would have been with. I probably was, I don't know, but you would have been in the one above because you were at least like getting minutes. So, regardless, I'm trying to gas you up as well.
Thank you.
Like I would always be losing, and it wouldn't really get to me that much because I would always be like, yeah, it's fine. But what would get to me is the people on my team who would then get angry that we've lost. And it's a weird one because it's like you're trying to manage your own perspective on, no, it's fine. Like we'll win we'll do better next time. You know, in 5 years' time, when these guys are on the bench because they've been, you know, we'll be the true winners then. Yay.
Yeah. I get you.
that was like a really interesting one.
I think that can be a bit detrimental too.
Yeah, I think in a sport like football, I think that can be.
Because I feel like you do have to put everything into right now.
Yes. Where in business, it's probably not that way as much.
Yeah.
I'm sure it probably does have it in specific aspects. Like football and business are very similar in that. But because I think we did speak about this on Thursday. In basketball, there is a more one-to-one relationship with your results and your actions, where in football,
Yes.
your results and your actions aren't as directly related. And that's because, like, if I want to score a goal as a football player, firstly, the ball has to get to me so that I can get in that position. In basketball,
Yeah.
I can get the ball off someone else, even if they're on my team, and score that goal. Oh,
Yes.
look at me. That's really Australian. Score that basket. They can score that basket.
Yeah.
What is that called? I
Yeah.
don't even know what it's called.
Yeah, it's basket. Yeah.
Americans are fuming right now in the comments.
Yeah.
But gosh. But yeah, I think that, like, in that situation, football, you definitely need an ego. You need to be very arrogant. You need to be,
But I think I would challenge that because yes, you do. But I think for us, if we could differentiate and be more mindful in that moment, in that game, because I think we probably would think we always thought of long term, even in that moment. Or for me, definitely, I always thought that if it was going badly, I'd be like, well, that's okay because eventually I'll improve.
Yeah.
Whereas almost being more mindful in that moment and being like, yeah, feeding your ego a little bit more, being like, it is still important now that I perform.
Mm-hmm. So
because the moment you have then is all that matters really, because the future you don't know what happens in the future. You might not get that. So really, if you do have that belief in yourself, that moment you're in is all that matters.
So what would you say the best way to approach a competitive situation is when you don't believe you're the best in the room, but you still want to show the best of your ability?
Yeah, I would say I think it's, you see with boxers as well, when they were in the press conferences, they always you've never seen a boxer be like, oh, I don't think I'm as good as this person, but eventually I'll have a better career than them. No, they'll be like, I'm going to knock this guy's head off. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, feeding into and being more mindful into your ego, because we both have an ego, but we channel it in a different way.
Yeah.
We have the growth mindset over the ego.
Yes.
I think being more mindful into your ego then, and thinking that someone like me will perform in this moment. And I think really feeding into that, and then no matter what the consequences, then you can always go back to the schema that at the end of the day, I'll grow and I'll be better. Yeah.
It's very
what
difficult
do you think about that.
I think that the two contradict each other, because it's like, how can I be someone who is focused on the long term, but then also somewhat very, very confident in their attributes now? It's like you have to be a certain player or certain person to have a good enough skill set now, but then also believe that you are going to get even better in the future, which typically the two character traits don't go aligned. So it's a very, very difficult thing to get to. And I'd say in football, most people aren't that way, who are the best football players. Most people, it's just like they are really good and they really believe that they are really good right now. And even if they're not really good right now, they still believe it. And we're probably on the other side. But the best situation would probably be somewhere in the middle, which is probably like the players like, Ronaldo, Kobe, those types of people.
Yeah. But can you not look at where you've come from to see how good you are now? But can you not look at what you've achieved in the past to know how far you've come and your abilities now?
I think that we both did that though. But in that situation, it's probably outweighed by the other people who have done arguably more, right?
Yeah.
So you would still see, like when I walked into Bulls training in the first team, for example, I was like, well, I know I'm the lowest on the totem pole here. And in football, it's very like that as well.
Yeah. But then you could see, I think you can, and we always talk about it with narrative as well. You can always tailor your narrative to believe something. And I think with the growth mindset, thinking that, well, one day I'm going to be better than all of these people, being almost saying that, well, the character that will be better, why can't I apply that now? That sort of person would be able to perform now. And I think really attaching yourself to that in the moment is the most important.
See, I think that I actually did do that. but maybe it wasn't good enough in the moment.
Yeah.
Wow, I'll wait for my sister to go past again. Are you going to go past? Who does she think she is? New Sculpted co-host podcast person?
Hello.
He said you're not allowed on the podcast.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't get invited, Juliet. You forced yourself in the situation.
No, I'm watering my vegetables actually.
How are the wisdom teeth?
How
Ask
are the
wisdom
wisdom teeth? Actually, I forgot about them.
Is Nick treating you well or not?
Am I treating you well, Jill?
Never. Even his friend
Never.
last night.
Oh, this happened.
Goes, Nicholas, you're so mean to your sister. And I was like,
Can you hear her? Because the mic.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I can hear.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
literally. And I
Yeah.
said, his other friend who came over the other week literally said,
Don't worry, it comes out of insecurity. That's why he bullies people.
Jack said that it comes out of insecurity. That's why I bully people. And you know what? He's right.
Keep that in.
Keep that. He said that it comes out of insecurity that I bully people. And I said, you know what? He's right.
Doesn't make it excusable though, does it?
Oh, it does.
What? Like my
No,
clients
it's not an excuse.
I mean, no, it's not an excuse. It's
Yourself,
it's
Nicholas.
inexcusable. Maybe I'm just projecting the past bullies that have bullied Nick onto my sister to make me feel better.
It's a circle of life. Have you heard about the circle of life of screaming?
I would love to learn more.
This is funny. So usually the boss of a company,
Yeah.
their wife, because he or she, we're not going to assume, yeah, yeah, he or she will get screamed at for working too much at
Yeah.
home by their partner or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So then they need to put the scream somewhere. So they go to work and they scream at the next in charge. And then guess what? And then guess where they go? They
To
scream
their
at the
wife.
person next in charge.
Okay.
No, they scream at the people that work for them.
Yeah.
And it's a continuous loop.
And
I think the people at the bottom probably scream at their sister. Like you.
Oh gosh. But so do you think that if we reverse engineer that whole process and we look at where the root problem is, does it not
Yeah.
start off with the wife?
Well, that's why they say happy, you know?
Happy man is God's plan.
Exactly right.
There we go. Oh gosh. Okay. I remember where we were, by the way. I do remember.
You do remember?
Yes. I was saying that.
Can we just take a moment? Sorry.
Yeah.
Look at the detail of my notes and look at your 7 words.
I apologize. I will be better next week. I do apologize.
No, you should. That should feed your ego. You're like, look, I don't even need notes. I've got 7 words.
And I won't stutter. Oh gosh, let's see. Okay, I remember where I was. I'm gonna go for it. So, I think that actually was my approach at Bulls, but maybe in the moment I wasn't that good with dealing with it because in the moment, like, there's actually a few specific moments where I'm like, oh my days, I can't believe that happened to me, and I kind of like dealt with it kind of well. Actually, it was that one training session that we spoke about, and like, I thought that was probably my best session.
Oh, the one where.
Juliet, we are recording right now, and we have to cut this every single time that you come into the screen. Okay, you better not come back outside, by the way. Gosh. We were talking about the training session, and
Honestly, we've spent so much time on Bulls. I'm getting PTSD.
yeah, same. I'm actually shaking right now, just out of nerves.
But
The thickest. Gosh. Yeah. Didn't have a personality, but that's fine. You don't need that half the time.
football.
Yeah, literally, he knows nothing but football. Really cool calves, and I look nice. He's got great calves. Really good calves.
Not as good as you, mate.
That's a compliment, but I would say that he's got nicer calves.
Oh,
Okay, we were talking about my... Oh, in the moment. Yeah, in the moment, I think that I suffered because it's like everyone's against me and I know where I lie on the totem pole, and it's really, really difficult in those situations. And I don't know if there was actually a really, really good way where I could have made it out alive.
yeah. I think that's why, at the end of the day, we always come back to it, why we retired, not quit, Nick.
Great
Yeah,
point.
retired. was because we had almost too much awareness,
Yeah.
self-awareness for it. Don't you think? You almost need to be blinded and a bit
Yeah.
naive. And I think because we were so aware, it did definitely work to my detriment. I know that for sure.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And like one example there is that the only way that I could have come out of it better is if I was better skill-wise, which is like...
No, it wouldn't be.
You don't...
Because even if you're better
Oh,
skill-wise,
the narrative
you
would have
still
been
think
there.
about the possibilities of how good you would be.
But when I
It would have
trained...
been, the only difference would have been the results. If you'd been picked for like an under-16s Australian camp,
Yeah.
then you'd be like, oh, well, I do belong here already.
Yeah, good point. I see what you're saying. But when I trained with the first team 6 months later and I was much better, then I was received much better in the team. So the narrative was still there from the first times when I'd been
Or maybe they just
off-season.
expected the poor passes at their knees.
You know what?
No?
Very, very possible. Very, very possible. But I remember the coaches even said that I did better. So that was a win in my books. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a difficult one to expand on. But I think, Jack, we should probably shift a little bit to the next point. Did you want to go over your next point?
My next point would be, following on from comparison, is how it can feed hunger or motivation. I know both words Nick hates, but almost giving you the activation energy to build discipline and a routine that will create a better life. And I think it's exactly why inspirational or motivational, like short videos work.
Oh, I love watching my David Goggins videos as soon as I wake up.
Exactly. When David Goggins screams in your ear, you think it gives you the activation energy to be like, I can be better.
Yeah.
But I think that only creates a short spurt of activation energy.
Yes.
Whereas I think building the ideal version of yourself and having the high standards, and that will probably come from comparison, because like we said with the two equal socioeconomic communities, if you don't know that there's better, there'll be no path to get there. So I think comparison put in the right schema is almost endless hunger. It will drive you to a better life for sure.
Yeah. There's probably a point in time as well where all of that momentum could even be shifted away from that comparison to where you get so lost in the process and forget about that comparison. And soon enough, the things that were quote unquote motivating you for that action previously are no longer the motivating forces for you, which I would say is exactly what my early stages of football was, where the reason why I started was probably for the comparison. And then quickly after I overtook everyone who I was comparing myself to, because that was very, very quick for me. Like I'd say in a year.
Sorry. There's your ego again.
This was more of a an awareness piece on how low the other people comparing me were, the competitors.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone else was like here, and I was like here, but I was quickly able to get to there, just through a year. And then I would say that the motivation changed a little bit because, and I say motivation for its root cause here. I don't say motivation as if it's an external party picking me up and making me, train. I say motivation is the reason for action. We love that one.
For that caveat.
Yeah. And the reason for action there shifted after I progressed, and it then became I got lost in the process. And kind of like the analogy that I was explaining to you the other day, Jack, where I need to expand on it and drive up to Sydney and back to actually figure it out the right way.
Yes.
I think that we can very easily get caught in the process of sharpening the axe and knowing when to actually say, yeah, this axe is sharp enough for me to hit down the tree. And if I was to spend too much time sharpening the axe, I would have already hit the tree down by now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that case, you kind of get lost in the process. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do need to know when to hit the tree.
Yeah. I think, and that's the biggest thing, is not seeing, going back to comparison, is not seeing the comparison as I want to be this person, but saying, how is this person me? Or having that view of yourself that it probably, going back to football, what is the view of ourselves when we're this good, and almost like having that vision and then striving towards that vision as opposed to striving towards someone else's now, almost like, yeah, comparing that to what you can be.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so addictive, right? Because that is just like the whole idea of Sculpted. That's never ending.
It's drip feeding it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A little bit like how, and I'm not very well versed on casinos, but I do believe that they try and I'm not really giving myself a good case here for.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I don't gamble, guys, but I'm just thinking about on a psychological level of gamification. It is slowly drip fed, and it does.
You cooked so much just then, and then you said drip fed.
And it does slowly breed the incentivization, right? Like I think that we actually were speaking about this on Thursday, maybe, Jack, where I was talking about how the progress level. So when you're first starting off, you want to be constantly re-incentivized. Yeah, well done. You got up today and went for a run. Good job. You brushed your teeth before bed. Yeah, cool. You did 12 push-ups like me because that's all I can do. Good job. And then once you can start to get more and more, maybe you go for 2 runs that day. Maybe you go for 13 push-ups or maybe like 3 pull-ups like myself. Then you don't need that gratification as frequently. And then it becomes more and more distant because it becomes more and more delayed. And the more and more delayed the gratification is, the bigger the reward or the gratification. If I was to get instant gratification all the time, it trains my receptors or my dopamine receptors to actually devalue that gratification so much. And when that's why delayed gratification is so powerful and so addictive, is because if you can get to the point where you are only seeking delayed gratification, then when that delayed gratification comes, then you're going to feel on top of the world. Whereas if you are training yourself to always be gratified, then something that is so long in the future and so far away, you will never be bothered to go chase it because you can just pick up your phone and scroll TikTok. And that's more gratifying than that will ever be.
And that is backed by science, where the variable interval schedules reinforcement. So thank you.
Great word.
Yeah, I need my own hype man. But so that's how casinos work. And why gambling is so important, because why it's so successful. Why casinos are so successful, right? Is because it's a variable amount of time that goes by in between each reinforcement or each reward that someone gets. So you keep doing the behavior and you have no idea when the reinforcement is coming because it keeps changing. It could be twice in a row, or it could be you could go and never get the reward. Yeah. And that is, and almost, sort of acknowledging that and then disassociating from trying to get the reward.
Yeah, the dissociation is a very interesting factor because that's usually just time in the game almost. Like the more and more you're in it, the more dissociated you'll be.
Yes.
Which actually I believe is helpful for a pursuit that has a positive reward. I mean, in gambling, I'd say it's a pretty negative reward most of the time. And in that case, you don't really want to be dissociated with, putting down 100K just for vibes. But can't believe I just said that, for vibes. That was really weird.
100K just for vibes.
100K just because you don't want to really be too dissociated with that unless you've got 100K. Even then, it's just irresponsible. But yes. Dissociation. It's interesting, helpful, but sometimes unhelpful.
Yeah. And it goes back to just self-awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of, like you said, I think it's huge. Time in the game, it will get easier. The work becomes easier.
Yeah.
But in terms of the starting activation energy, using comparison with action is so important to get you on that path. And then having those positive reinforcement loops where you almost recognize and give yourself credit for the progress you're making, definitely in the initial stages.
And it compounds as well, which is the great thing. Like what takes me, the example that I usually give for this is actually video editing. Like what takes me 20 minutes now may have taken me 3 hours just at the beginning of the year. Actually, I remember it took me a day to do a 5-second video in this one video editing software. I reckon if I was to do it today, it would take me 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the compound effect.
Yeah. And that is, and recognizing that does give you confidence.
Oh
in
yeah,
the moment,
the
doesn't it?
most.
Yeah, the most.
And
Definitely for you. Too much confidence.
yeah, a little bit too
definitely.
much. I would say it's really interesting to see my perspective on my football and then my video editing, because I've got such an ego in my video editing, like such an ego. But in football,
Yeah.
I've got no ego. Like,
Yeah,
if,
yeah,
and the amount of time that I've spent on video editing is minuscule compared to the amount of time that I spent on football. And I could tell you so much about video editing, and I could tell you so much about football, but I've got so much more confidence in
Yeah,
my
because you
ability.
judge in football that you only get the confidence from the output, right? Or what you get from it, the outcome. Whereas video editing, like you just said, it's you almost judge your success on your input. It took you one day, now it can take you 20 minutes. And whereas it's not as if you're focused on, yes, you're focused on what you're producing, but it's not as if someone has to say, "That's amazing, Nick. Look at that," for you to almost gain that ego. It's you just seeing that. Look how much my skill has progressed. It's a direct correlation between how efficient your input is.
Yeah, it's really it's such a weird approach, because I knew that going into the video editing for me, I knew that I didn't want to have the same approach that I had with football, because I knew that I'd just be stepped on. And like, I kind of, and I think I've explained this to you before, Jack, like when I go to work, I'm a completely different person. I act like a prick.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry. Because I'd say I visually am like a bit of a prick normally. I'd say I lean into the prick. Like I lean into being a prick a little bit more.
You're just yourself when you go to work.
I'd say like I'm myself, but like times 2 multiplier. It's
Okay.
like, yeah, that's what I'd say. And like if someone was to say anything rude to me, yeah, I'd either like clap back, when if anything rude happened to me in football, actually, no, I won't say the exact thing, but you might remember when I brought my Sydney FC bag into the training room, what happened?
Oh, did you?
Did you remember do you not know what happened?
No.
It got hung up in the locker, hidden. No, it was just hanging up on the ceiling.
Wait, you took a Sydney FC into the A-League change room?
Yeah.
Well, that was just stupid.
I didn't think that was that bad. I'm not going to lie. I was wearing a Central Coast Mariners jumper, and then brought a Sydney FC bag in the change room. I didn't think it was that bad.
Shows how much you really cared about football, doesn't it?
Facts.
But in that environment, they really care about A-League clubs. So I don't want to diminish how not important that is.
It's
But,
a great point, yeah. And I mean, I won't say who did it, but I think you might be able to put 2 and 2 together who did it. But like, yeah, it was a pretty funny moment. I'm not going to lie. But that happened to me. I stayed.
Were you laughing?
Yeah, I was crying inside. I was shocked. I was thinking, how could anyone do this to me? I'm a young boy. I'm a young boy. How has this happened to me? And but now, if that was to have happened to me at work in the environment that I'm in now, I would probably. No, that's crazy. You probably know where my head went there with bags.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would clap back now. And that's probably also just because I'm a little bit older and I know that, I probably shouldn't just allow myself to be stepped on like that. But
yeah,
interesting to see the different perspectives going into a different.
Actually, you knew you wouldn't be able to get the reward for your work if you had clap backed in that scenario.
Yeah.
In the football scenario.
Yes,
because
exactly.
Imagine if a 18-year-old kid or whatever you were.
16, young boy.
Were you actually 16?
Yeah.
Back then?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 16, 17.
Wow, 16, that's unbelievable. Yeah.
Thank you.
16, imagine if you'd had a go at some older experienced player.
Yeah.
No matter how good you are on the work you put in, you're not getting the outcome.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why we like the endeavors we're doing now, because it's in our control.
Yeah, very much.
So.
Would you say that you've got any comparable situations in your current work, let's say, or studies, even, where the approach that you had with football is changed in the environment that you're now in?
Yeah, probably same as you, having a bit more confidence in what I am now as opposed to where I will be eventually.
Can you draw any parallels to where when you had the same attitude in football, and has that same approach with football changed to the current work environment or study environment that you're now in?
Yes, I think definitely in football, I was so focused on the outcome. And yes, I worked really hard on the process, but I didn't enjoy the process at all. And
Wait, what?
for football,
Really?
I didn't enjoy the process at all. I didn't like training. I sort of did it to try get rid of the aversive feeling of I'm not where I want to be now.
Okay.
So I'd work really hard.
Yeah, we're wording it differently.
Obviously, there was satisfaction after a hard training session. You
Yeah.
get that high, like the dopamine high.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as if I loved going to training.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't really love going to training.
Yeah.
And that was it almost takes so much willpower to keep grinding away to think that, yeah, I'm really, really working hard here. Whereas I'm making sure now in what I pursue is I really focus on the process and enjoying the process and framing that in a way that it's not based on the results I get, but it's like what I learn.
Yeah.
And trying to apply what I learn to my own life. And then that gives me the positive reinforcement. That's the outcome, really. If I focus on learning and then I can learn that and then apply it to my life and see a change, then I think that's what I'm focusing on, really trying to, enjoy the process a lot more.
Yeah, okay. I would say the exact same as me. I think that we probably just word it differently. Like, I'd say I fell in love with the process, but I hated training. Really liked the feeling afterwards. The same emotions, the same feelings, but just different wording. But yeah. It is a.
But I think we sort of have that similar, that we loved the like grind of it all and the structure and the routine.
Yeah.
And how that made us feel and the narrative that created. But we probably change in that I sort of believe in passion, sort of. And I try to feed my passion, whereas you really don't believe in it.
Ew.
Your narrative serves you to really avoid anything that has anything to do with passion.
That is true. And I think that's allows me to shift easily.
Yes.
Which, in my situation, probably helps me. And I also then could understand how another person's situation, it may actually help them to believe in passion.
Yes.
So.
Well, that's good awareness. Well done.
Thank you. I try and get better.
Yeah. And that's a perfect way to end, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, honestly. I think that's really, really interesting. That was a heaps good episode. I really liked that one. It was well structured, and I'll give you your props here, Jack, because you did always hint at what the next topic would be without saying it.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. In the beginning, like the beginning topic, you were talking about how comparison's the thief of joy, and then you're like, and that relates to ego. And then when we were talking about ego, you were then talking about the comparison again, and you're bleeding in. It was very good.
Can you cut the did I? Because I want to act as if that was on purpose.
And we're keeping that in.
I've been working on it.
You actually will 100% see you will improve so quickly at articulating. Like, I really think. Because like when I'm editing your videos and the little clips, you'll probably see like I don't want to say it in a bad way because I was the exact same, but you stutter a lot. But
I do. I've watched it already. Don't worry, I've already reviewed myself.
Yeah. So. 2-hour reflections?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Not 2 hours.
3?
I'd probably jump off a bridge if I did 2-hour reflections on how bad I was.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you will see, because like, I'm very inarticulate and I've got a horrible vocabulary, but you are actually, you got a pretty good vocabulary. I would say that you can just expand on that, and I reckon we'll see Jack McLaughlin on our TV screens when you're watching the Sculpted podcast very soon in the future, in a cinema near you.
Screens.
Well, cinema. Yeah, cinema.
Doing the weather.
That's a bit of a downfall. Jeez. Gosh. Hope not.
Never know. Yeah, me neither.
We'll see, bro. We'll see. But anyways, I think that sums it up. That was a good podcast.
I agree.
Awesome.
As always.
Well, we will catch you on the next week of the Sculpted podcast, guys. Ciao.